welcome to our deep dives today. We're going to be looking at something kind of interesting. The idea that maybe our obsession with competition is actually holding us back.
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah. And to really get into this, we're going to be using Margaret Heffernan's book, A Bigger Prize.
Okay.
And in it, she kind of explores how this whole competition thing shapes, like, everything,
Right.
from our personal lives,
Right.
even down to how we raise our families, all the way up to education, business,
Yeah.
even like scientific progress.
Wow.
And, I got to say, Heffernan, she really lays out this really compelling case for how, like, a hyper-competitive mindset can actually be really detrimental.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not just theory. She, like, brings in all these real-world examples to show how, this drive to win it can actually, like, stifle innovation and lead to some pretty bad consequences.
I mean, that makes sense. I've definitely seen that happen.
Yeah, and right off the bat, she throws us into this story about this family, the Hobbs family, Alice and Paul Hobbs, and their, like, ultra-competitive son, Harry.
Oh, boy.
And their family life is completely, like, upside down because of him.
Oh, wow.
It's actually when he goes away on a school trip that they finally get a moment of peace.
So they can breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you think, how much of our own family dynamics are, like, dictated by this need to, like, outdo each other.
Right. Even in those little things,
Exactly. Even in those little things.
Yeah.
And it's a great example of how, deep-seated that competitive instinct is, but also how it can, like, really warp even the most loving relationships.
Totally. I mean, you think about all those classic stories, Cain and Abel, or Romulus and Remus.
Oh, yeah.
Like rivalry. It's like woven into our culture.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. But Heffernan goes beyond that. She actually explores this concept of hyper-competitiveness.
Okay.
That really intense need to win at all costs.
At all costs, yeah.
And the downsides of that.
And she ties this to Frank Soloway's research on birth order and personality.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. So, like, firstborns, they've had their parents' undivided attention for a while, so they tend to be, like, defenders of the status quo.
Okay.
But later born children, they got to fight for their niche, right?
Right.
So they might be more rebellious and open to change.
I wonder if there's any truth to that.
Right. I mean, does that resonate with you at all in your family?
Maybe a little bit. I am the youngest.
Okay.
I've got 2 older siblings.
Interesting.
But I don't know. I think every family is so different.
You're right. Every family is unique.
Yeah.
But what Heffernan's really getting at is that parents can actually shape how their kids approach conflict.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's not about, like, eliminating competition altogether,
Right.
but, like, teaching them how to resolve disputes in a constructive way, even, like, a creative way.
I like that.
Imagine a world where, like, collaboration is the go-to, not cutthroat competition.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she talks about these studies where they actually trained parents in mediation. And the results were amazing.
Yeah.
Like, their kids became better problem solvers.
Really?
Yeah, they were coming up with these really innovative solutions.
So cool.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you think, are we doing enough to equip, like, future generations with these skills?
Right? Are we just throwing them into the lion's den without giving them the tools they need?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like, are we setting them up for success or just for, like, constant stress and anxiety?
It's a good question. I mean, we do live in a pretty competitive world.
We do.
Ew.
And then she takes us into the world of education,
Okay.
which is, like, often seen as this breeding ground for competition.
Right.
We get thrown into this pressure cooker of the New York school system
Oh, boy.
through the eyes of Betsy Rappaport, this education consultant.
Okay.
And it's like this world where every test score, every extracurricular activity, it's like a life or death battle.
At high stakes.
Oh, it's so high stakes. And it's only getting more intense
Right.
with the way the economy's,
Yeah.
youth unemployment rates and all that. A top-tier education feels like the only ticket to a secure future.
Totally.
It's no wonder kids are so stressed out.
It's a lot of pressure.
So much pressure.
Yeah, but it makes you wonder, does all this pressure actually make them better learners?
That's the question, right?
Yeah, Heffernan talks about this really fascinating experiment by Edward Dizussi and Richard Ryan,
Okay.
and it revealed something really surprising.
What's that?
They found that offering rewards for drawing actually decreased kids' intrinsic motivation to draw.
Wait, so rewarding them made them less interested in drawing?
Yeah.
That seems backwards.
I know, right? You'd think it would be the opposite.
Yeah.
But the researchers, they concluded that the reward shifted the focus away from, like, the pure enjoyment of the activity itself.
It's like it became about the reward, not the drawing.
Exactly.
Right.
And, if you apply that to education,
Right.
if we're constantly emphasizing grades and test scores, Are we accidentally killing their natural curiosity?
And their love of learning. It makes you wonder if our current system is actually like nurturing well-rounded individuals
Right.
or just creating a generation of stressed-out test takers.
It's a good point.
Heffernan also brings up how standardized tests might not even be the best way to measure intelligence or creativity.
Hmm.
There's research showing that our genes actually influence how we respond to stress.
Oh, wow.
So some people naturally excel in exams while others just fall apart.
Even if they're equally capable.
Exactly.
Mm.
It's almost like we're favoring worriers over warriors in the classroom.
Interesting perspective.
Right.
And she introduces us to this school in Singapore called St. Joseph's Institution.
Okay.
And they're doing things a little differently. They've got this teach less, learn more approach.
Interesting.
They incorporate more time for art music, unstructured play.
So instead of just drilling facts and formulas,
Mm.
they're actually encouraging curiosity and exploration.
Yeah.
That's pretty bold, especially in a place like Singapore.
I know, right? It's a high-achieving culture.
Yeah. But could this be like the key to unlocking creativity and problem-solving skills?
The skills we actually need in the real world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The skills for the 21st century.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
And then she brings up Finland.
Okay.
Their education system is like world-renowned.
Yeah, they always rank at the top.
They've rejected streaming and standardized tests.
Wow.
They focus on fostering a love of learning and collaboration.
And their teachers see themselves as lifelong learners alongside their students?
Yeah, creating this really egalitarian environment.
It's amazing.
And their results are impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, they consistently rank at the top in those international assessments like PISA.
That's incredible.
Maybe their approach has something to teach us about how to adapt our education systems for the future.
Yeah, I mean, it really challenges that assumption that competition is the only path to excellence.
Right.
And this kind of leads us to another area where Heffernan applies this lens, romantic relationships.
Okay.
Is love a game to be won, or is there a healthier way to approach connection?
Ooh, that's a good one. And we've all probably felt that at some point.
Yeah.
That feeling of like sizing people up.
Like contestants in a dating game show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like who's winning the dating game?
It's so weird when you think about it like that.
I know. And Heffernan shares these anecdotes from Mary, who was totally shocked by the cutthroat social scene at university,
Oh, wow.
and Penny, who talks about the pressure of Saturday night outings,
Ugh, I remember those days.
right? Like it's all about who you're seen with.
Yeah, and who you're not seen with.
And it makes you wonder if all this comparison is actually preventing us from forming like genuine connections.
I think it probably does. It's
Yeah.
easy to get caught up in that who's winning mentality, especially when you look at reality dating shows like The Bachelor.
Oh, yeah. They just take it to a whole other level.
Right, but then Heffernan contrasts that with the story of Sarah, who actually strategized and planned to win her husband David.
Wow. So she was playing the game.
Yeah. She was playing the game. But ironically, she later realized that the chase was actually more fulfilling than the prize.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like we're so focused on the end goal.
The wedding, the status of being in a relationship,
Exactly, that we miss out on the journey.
the actual connection, the
Right.
shared experiences.
Right, it's like we're confusing the trophy for the actual relationship.
And this competitive pressure, it goes beyond just finding a partner.
Oh, yeah.
Heffernan talks about the pressure to have children.
Right.
She mentions this woman, Beth, who feels like not having a baby makes her a loser.
Oof, that's tough.
It's like even our most personal life choices are judged through this lens of competition.
Yeah, it's like there's no escape.
Nowhere is safe.
And even intellectual compatibility isn't immune.
Right.
Heffernan talks about Ayn Rand and Nathaniel Branden.
Oh, yeah.
They were like intellectual soulmates, but their constant power struggle completely destroyed their connection.
It's like a cautionary tale.
Yeah, even brilliant minds can fall prey to the destructive forces of hyper-competition.
So it's not just about intelligence or talent.
No, it's about how we relate to each other.
Right.
But it's important to remember that not all relationships are doomed to this fate.
Right.
Heffernan highlights couples like Glenda and Imogen who view their partnership as a joint venture.
Oh.
They contribute their strengths and support each other's aspirations.
So it's about mutual respect and shared goals.
Exactly.
And this connects to Eric Kleinberg's research on relationships, right?
Yeah, he emphasizes the importance of diverse social connections.
Friendships, family, community.
It's all vital to our well-being.
And within these diverse connections, we often see the most genuine collaboration.
Right, people coming together to support each other and achieve shared goals.
It makes you rethink that whole lone wolf idea.
Yeah, like maybe we're not meant to go it alone.
And this brings us to another key concept that Heffernan explores, the pecking order.
Ah, yes, the pecking order.
She introduces us to Thorleif Skjelderup Eby, this Norwegian scientist who actually coined the term.
Interesting.
And get this, he studied chickens.
Chickens.
Chickens! The irony is not lost on Heffernan.
I bet not.
Skjelderup Eby himself struggled for recognition within the academic hierarchy,
Oh, wow.
despite his groundbreaking work.
It's like he was trapped in the very system he described.
Exactly.
That's kind of funny.
It makes you question whether our fixation on hierarchies and pecking orders actually hinders our ability to identify and nurture true talent.
Yeah, like maybe we're overlooking some brilliant minds because they don't fit into the mold.
And Heffernan doesn't just stop at chickens and academics.
Oh, no.
She connects this concept to Carrie Arnold's research on eating disorders.
Really?
Yeah, suggesting that they're often fueled by this extreme social competition.
Wow.
People go to such lengths to conform to a certain body ideal.
It's really sad.
It shows how damaging social comparison can be.
Absolutely.
The pecking order can have some very real and very harmful consequences.
So how do we even begin to understand these complex dynamics?
Well, Heffernan introduces us to Geert Hofstede's concept of power distance. It measures how much societies accept and expect inequality.
Interesting.
So the US and UK tend to have lower power distance,
Okay.
while countries like China and Malaysia have much higher power distance.
So it's a spectrum.
Yeah, it helps us understand how cultural norms influence our acceptance of hierarchies.
So in a high power distance culture, you'd expect to see more rigid social structures.
Right, with less room for questioning authority or challenging the status quo.
And this ties into Richard Wilkinson and Kate Pickett's book, The Spirit Level.
Okay.
They argue that high levels of inequality lead to all sorts of negative outcomes.
Like what?
Poorer health, increased crime rates.
Wow.
It's a reminder that these systems of competition and dominance, they don't just impact individuals, they impact entire societies.
Like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
But before we get too bogged down in all the doom and gloom,
Right.
Heffernan does offer some glimmers of hope.
Okay, good. I was getting a little depressed.
She introduces us to Mike North, this engineer who teamed up with others to develop a low-cost foot brace for children in Nicaragua.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And his story is so inspiring because it shows the power of choosing collaboration.
Even when he could have done it alone.
Exact.
He realized that by working together, they could create a more effective solution.
And it wasn't just about feel-good intentions.
Right.
It led to tangible, impactful results.
That's what I love about collaboration. It's not just about warm fuzzies, it's about getting things done.
Exactly. It gives you a sense of optimism knowing that people are actively choosing collaboration over competition.
Yeah, even in really challenging circumstances.
And it makes you wonder what else is possible if we just work together.
I mean, what could we achieve if we stopped seeing each other as the enemy?
That's a great question.
Yeah, food for thought.
Definitely.
And then she takes us into these like really cool examples of companies that have chosen collaboration over that cutthroat competition.
Okay.
And the results are like mind-blowing. One that really stands out is W.L. Gore.
Oh, yeah. The Gore-Tex people.
Yeah, they've got this like super unique, flat organizational structure.
Flat structure.
No titles, no bosses.
Whoa, wait. So, like, nobody's the boss.
Nope. It's kind of like a dream come true for anyone who's ever felt stifled by bureaucracy.
I can imagine.
Mm.
But, like, can a company actually function without, like, a traditional hierarchy?
Well, Gore seems to be doing just fine. They're a multi-billion-dollar company,
Wow.
and they're known for innovation and high-quality products. Heffernan actually spoke with Carrie Kelly, who's worked there for a long time.
Okay.
And she says the real reward isn't some fancy title.
Right.
It's the recognition and respect of your peers.
So it's like this system that fosters mutual support and shared success.
Instead of individual ambition and competition.
Huh. It makes you wonder if this could be a model for other organizations.
Right, like break free from those rigid top-down structures.
Yeah.
And Heffernan contrasts this with companies like Microsoft.
Okay.
They had this infamous stack ranking system.
Stack rank.
Yeah, where they basically pitted employees against each other.
Oh, wow.
It created this like toxic environment where people were afraid to share ideas or take risks.
Because they might get stabbed in the back.
Exactly. And it ended up stifling innovation.
That's a shame. It seems like a classic example of how competition can backfire.
It totally is.
Heffernan also talks about Ocean Spray.
The cranberry people?
Yeah, a farmer-owned cooperative that's been thriving for decades.
I love their cranberry juice.
Me too. And they prioritize the long-term well-being of their members over like short-term profits.
So they're not just all about the money.
It shows that collaboration can actually be a recipe for success.
Sustainable success.
It's a really interesting model.
It's like collaborative capitalism.
Collaborative capitalism. I like that.
The farmers work together to produce and market their cranberries.
Okay.
They share both the risks and the rewards.
That's really cool.
Heffernan even tells this story about Gary Gerritsen, one of the farmers.
Okay.
He actually invented his own cranberry harvesting machines.
Wow. So they encourage innovation within their cooperative.
Yeah, it's a great example of how collaboration can foster innovation.
Even in unexpected places.
Exactly.
This is so different from those big corporations that prioritize profits above all else.
Right. And Heffernan shows the dark side of that mentality with RBS and Barclays Banks.
Oh, yeah. What happened with them?
Their aggressive competitive strategies basically led to financial disaster.
Yikes.
It's a cautionary tale.
It really highlights the dangers of prioritizing unchecked growth and dominance.
Over sustainable practices and collaboration.
It's a pretty stark contrast.
It makes you think about what kind of world we're creating.
Right, where competition trumps everything else.
Is that really the kind of world we want to live in?
These examples really show that collaboration isn't just some, like, idealistic notion.
Yeah.
It's a powerful tool for achieving real results.
Whether it's developing a life-saving device or building a successful business.
It's about working together to make a difference.
And Heffernan then shifts gears a bit. She starts exploring how collaboration can actually fuel innovation,
Right.
challenging that assumption that competition is always the best driver of creativity.
I mean, we're always told that competition breeds innovation.
Right. But she uses a pretty unexpected example to make her point.
What's that?
Auto-tune.
Auto-tune. Like the thing that makes singers sound robotic.
Yeah, that one. It's definitely a controversial invention, but it's had a huge impact on music.
I mean, you can't deny its influence.
And it's a prime example of how innovation can come from the most unexpected places.
How so?
Well, the guy who invented it, Andy Hildebrand, he wasn't trying to revolutionize music production.
No.
He was just trying to solve a friend's problem.
So it was like a playful solution that turned into something much bigger.
Exactly. And it ended up changing the whole industry.
But like you said, auto-tune is controversial. Some people say it's homogenized music.
Right. Created this standard of perfection that feels artificial.
Like everyone sounds the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And Heffernan acknowledges that. She points out how auto-tune has changed our musical expectations.
It's like we're so used to hearing perfectly tuned vocals now that anything else sounds off.
And this tendency to imitate what's successful, it's not just in music.
Oh, really?
Where else do you see it?
Well, look at the film industry.
Okay.
All those formulaic sequels and remakes.
Yeah, it's like they're afraid to take risks.
Heffernan quotes Christine Vachon, an independent film producer.
Okay.
And she basically says, Hollywood lacks originality.
It's all about playing it safe, sticking to proven formulas.
It's a missed opportunity.
There's so much talent and creativity out there, but it feels like it's being stifled.
And that fear of failure, it's often fueled by a hyper-competitive environment.
So instead of pushing boundaries, they're just churning out the same old stuff.
And Heffernan then tackles the fast fashion industry,
Okay.
exposing its reliance on low wages and unsafe working conditions.
That's a whole other can of worms.
It's a reminder of how a focus on profit and competition can lead to exploitation. Yeah. It makes you question the true cost of cheap, trendy clothing.
Is it possible for an industry like that to adopt a more ethical approach?
It seems like a tough challenge.
It is. But Heffernan offers a counterpoint American Apparel.
Okay, I've heard of it.
They've got this sweatshop-free model.
Right.
They prioritize fair wages and ethical production.
So they're proving that it can be done.
Yeah, it's about making different choices, even in a highly competitive industry.
It's inspiring to see companies challenging the status quo.
Showing that profits and ethics don't have to be mutually exclusive.
It gives you hope that things can change.
And then Heffernan takes us to a really interesting setting to showcase collaboration.
Okay, where did that?
Iraq.
Iraq.
She tells this story about Brett Pierce, a Sesame Street producer.
Okay, what does Sesame Street have to do with Iraq?
Well, Pierce used game shows to promote collaboration and peace building among Iraqi teenagers.
Wow, game shows to foster peace.
It sounds crazy, but it worked.
I mean, game shows are all about competition.
They are. But Pierce realized that engaging activities that require teamwork,
Oh,
they were more effective than lectures or sermons.
it's about getting them involved.
Exactly. He tapped into the power of play and friendly competition.
To foster understanding and empathy,
Yeah. It's a great example of thinking outside the box.
and using unconventional methods to achieve amazing results.
And it shows that collaboration can flourish even in the most challenging environments.
That's really powerful.
And this leads us to one of Heffernan's most thought-provoking points,
But,
the limitations of GDP as a measure of progress.
okay, so she's questioning the whole idea of economic growth as the ultimate goal.
Exactly. She argues that it often comes at the expense of other things:
Like what?
social well-being, environmental sustainability, genuine human flourishing.
It's like we're so focused on the numbers that we forget about the people.
She even quotes Alan Greenspan, the former chairman of the Federal Reserve.
Okay.
He was a big fan of GDP.
Really?
He called it the achievement of the century.
It shows how deeply ingrained this economic mindset is.
Even among the most powerful people.
And to illustrate the potential downsides of this focus on competition,
Right.
she looks at the Human Genome Project.
The one that mapped the entire human genome.
Yeah, it was actually raced between two teams.
Oh, I didn't know that.
One led by John Sulston, who wanted open access to the data,
Okay.
and the other led by Craig Venter, who took a more commercial approach.
Interesting.
And while both teams contributed to the project's success,
Right.
Sulston later voiced concerns about Venter's competitive approach.
Like it hindered scientific progress.
Yeah, and that it led to the patenting of thousands of genes.
It raises some ethical questions.
For sure. It's like, is the drive to win always a good thing?
Especially when it comes to science and the greater good.
And then Heffernan introduces us to Elinor Ostrom.
A Nobel Prize-winning economist.
Wow.
She studied how communities manage shared resources.
Okay.
And she found that collaboration, not competition, was key to avoiding the tragedy of the commons.
The tragedy of the commons. What's that?
It's the idea that when people share a common resource, they tend to overuse it and deplete it.
Oh, yeah. Like overfishing or deforestation.
Exactly. But Ostrom found that communities can actually manage these resources sustainably.
If they work together.
It's about cooperation and shared responsibility.
Instead of just grabbing what you can get.
Right. We need to shift our thinking from individual gain to collective well-being.
It's like a paradigm shift.
And this applies to so many of the challenges we face today.
Climate change, resource, scarcity.
It's all interconnected.
Heffernan argues that we need to move beyond this narrow focus on competition.
And embrace a more collaborative approach.
If we want to create a truly thriving future.
It's a powerful message, and it makes you think about the role of collaboration in shaping a better world.
It's a pretty big shift in thinking, isn't it? Like, we're so used to seeing the world as this zero-sum game.
It is. It's like we're programmed to compete from the moment we're born.
Yeah. But Heffernan makes a really good case for collaboration.
She does. She argues that our biggest challenges, those really complex global issues,
Right.
we can't solve them by competing against each other.
It's going to take all of us working together.
Exactly. We need to move beyond self-interest.
And think about the collective good.
And that's not always easy.
No,
Yeah.
it's not. But, like, how do we actually make that shift?
Well, she offers some concrete steps.
Okay, I'm listening.
For starters, we need to rethink how we define success.
Okay, so not just GDP.
No, we need broader measures.
Things like social well-being, environmental sustainability, even happiness.
Right. It's about more than just economic growth.
Because right now, our obsession with economic growth, it often comes at the expense of those very things.
It's like we're sacrificing our well-being for the sake of bigger numbers.
Yeah. And maybe it's time to redefine what a winning society actually looks like.
Absolutely. And that goes hand in hand with building trust and open communication.
Right. Because in a hyper-competitive environment, people are afraid to share their ideas,
They're afraid to admit their mistakes.
afraid to ask for help.
And that fear, it stifles innovation.
It prevents us from learning from each other,
Exactly. It creates this culture of secrecy and suspicion.
where everyone's just looking out for themselves.
It's hard to imagine true collaboration in that kind of environment.
It's like a recipe for disaster.
And finally, Heffernan emphasizes the need for strong leadership.
Leaders who prioritize collaboration.
Yeah, leaders who model those values.
So they can create a ripple effect throughout their organizations.
Inspire others to embrace a more collaborative approach.
It sounds like we need a new kind of leader.
Leaders who are willing to let go of some control.
Leaders who see the bigger picture.
And it's not just about leaders in positions of authority. It's
Right.
about all of us taking responsibility for creating a more collaborative world.
So what can we do in our everyday lives?
Well, we can start by challenging that winner-take-all mentality.
In our families, our workplaces, our communities.
It's about making those small choices to cooperate instead of compete.
And Heffernan leaves us with this really powerful question.
Oh, yeah. What is...
If we were to reimagine our institutions and systems with collaboration at the forefront, what kind of world could we create?
That's a great question. It really makes you think.
It challenges us to rethink our assumptions.
And consider the possibilities of a more collaborative future.
It's a call to action.
It is. And that wraps up our deep dive into Margaret Heffernan's A Bigger Prize.
I hope it's given our listeners some food for thought.
Me too. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. And until next time.
Keep collaborating.